Your daughter is shameful. Your sister wants a trouble-free day. We were bound for the airport, bags packed, hope intact. I didn't cry or plead. I took action. When they saw us again, they turned pale. I still remember the way my stomach dropped that day, like a physical blow. My hands were on the steering wheel, knuckles white, and I had absolutely nowhere to put the feeling. You know those moments that just brand themselves into you? Permanent. Impossible to rub out. Mine happened with both hands locked at 10 and 2, the wheel faintly gritty beneath my palms, as my mother's voice sliced through the car. We were on the freeway, my daughter, Ivy, and I, bags packed, hope, foolish, stubborn hope, still clinging on. We were heading to the airport, meant to fly home for Thanksgiving. The sky was that flat, damp November gray that makes everything feel exhausted. The kind of day where the clouds hang low, pressing down, and the light has no warmth to it at all. Muted colors. The whole world felt muted. But not Ivy. Ivy was buzzing in the back seat, practically vibrating with excitement. Her little feet thumped the back of my seat, a rhythmic, joyful tattoo. She'd been counting down to this trip like it was Christmas, her birthday, and a unicorn sighting all rolled into one. "Do you think Mason will play with me this time?" she asked, her voice bright, full of innocent trust. Her eyes, bright and searching in the rearview mirror, looked to me for reassurance. Mason, my sister Allison's son, was 7 and treated Ivy like a mildly interesting app he could close whenever he got bored. I lied, of course. "I'm sure he will, sweetheart," I said, in that voice mothers use when they're lying for peace. Then she kept going, painting this vivid picture of the holiday. "And Paige is going to show me her new Barbie." Paige, Allison's daughter, 9, already had that kind of facial expression that could slice. She could arch an eyebrow and make Ivy feel like she'd spilled something, even when Ivy was just standing there, hopeful. But Ivy just hummed to herself, hugging her little stuffed fox, "So he can have Thanksgiving, too." Oblivious to the subtle currents of our family. She had even made place cards at school, those scribbled turkeys and lopsided eyes, carefully written names, Grandma, Grandpa, Mason, Paige. She believed her presence mattered. And honestly? A small, ridiculously persistent corner of me was leaning into that hope too. Not because I believed in sudden transformations, but because hope, apparently, can survive a lot. I just wanted one holiday, one 4-hour window, where maybe everyone would behave like adults. Maybe my mother would ruffle Ivy's hair and mean it. Maybe my father would actually laugh at something Ivy said. Maybe Allison wouldn't treat me like an inconvenience. Just, maybe. That word is so powerful. It can keep a person walking toward a door that's already locked. Then my phone rang. "Mom." My face moved before my mind did, a reflexive smile. My body, always the good daughter, the agreeable daughter. "Hey," I said, putting it on speaker, telling myself it was for driving safety. But another part of me, the hopeful part, still wanted Ivy to hear her grandmother's voice. To feel that warmth. "Hi, Sarah," my mother said. Her tone was careful. Controlled. Like a hand resting lightly on a lid to keep something from boiling over. I felt my smile falter. My eyes flicked to the road, as if staying focused could prevent whatever was coming. Too careful. "Hi, Mom," I said, trying to keep it light. "We're on the way." "I think we're going to make it with, listen," she cut in. And my optimism shattered into tiny, glittery pieces. That one word, listen. A command. The tone she used when I was a kid, when the conversation was already over. My stomach clenched, hard enough to make me nauseous. The freeway noise faded behind the sudden, heavy thud of my own heartbeat. "We've been talking," she said, her voice eerily calm, "and we think it's best if you don't come this year." The world tilted. The sentence hung there, heavy, in the air of the car. I blinked, actually blinked, like my eyes could reboot the sound and make it unhappen. "What?" I managed, the word small and stupid. I hated how it sounded. I hated that my first instinct was confusion, not anger, As if being excluded was so normal, it only startled me when someone said it out loud. It's just, she continued, like she was explaining the weather, your daughter is embarrassing. The highway didn't change. Cars kept going. The gray sky stayed gray. But something inside me cracked. Clean. Brutal. My breath caught, sharp. Heat rushed into my face, then drained away so fast my fingertips tingled. We don't want her there. Allison needs a drama-free day. There are moments when your body makes a decision without consulting you. Mine decided, right then, that if I stayed on this road, we were going to end up in someone's trunk. My hands tightened on the wheel until my wrists ached. The lane lines blurred. My vision narrowed. I flicked on my hazards and swerved onto the shoulder, half parking, half abandoning all traffic laws out of sheer survival. The car shuddered as we hit the rough edge. Gravel pinged. The constant rush of vehicles made the whole car vibrate, like it was trembling with me. Then, from the back seat, a small voice, "Mom?" That single syllable. A lifeline and a knife. My mother was still talking through the speaker, but my brain had zoomed in on one thing: Ivy heard it. The second that realization hit, I snatched the phone off speaker so fast it was a reflex, like grabbing a knife before a child steps on it. "Mom," I hissed, whispering, "I'm driving. Ivy is in the car. We're on the way to the airport." "What are you talking about?" "You heard me," she snapped, the careful tone gone. "It's better this way." Better for who? The question burned behind my teeth. I looked in the mirror again. Ivy wasn't kicking her feet anymore. She was just staring straight ahead, her fox hugged tight to her chest like it was armor. Her face had gone still, that way children's faces do when they're trying to understand something too big for them. The innocence was gone from her eyes, replaced by a tentative fear. Like she'd stepped into a room where the adults were suddenly dangerous. I didn't trust my mouth to stay safe in front of her for even one more sentence. "Hold on," I said, clipped. "1 second. Then I leaned back, forcing my voice gentle for Ivy. "Sweetheart, stay buckled. I'll be right outside the door." My hand trembled as I reached for the handle. I moved quickly, not because I wanted to leave her, but because I needed distance from the poison in my ear. Before she could answer, I was out of the car. Door shut. Cold air slapped my cheeks. The roar of the freeway swallowed everything. A constant, furious sound, like the world itself was shouting. "Okay," I said into the phone, low and steady. "Say it again." My mother didn't even pretend to soften it. "Allison doesn't want the stress. She has guests. We're not doing this." "Guests?" I repeated, flat, the word suddenly meaningless. I could taste something bitter in the back of my throat. My eyes stung, from the wind, and from this sudden, humiliating urge to cry. I forced myself not to. Not here. Not where Ivy might see. Not where my mother would hear it and file it away as evidence. "So Ivy is what?" I said. "A bad luck?" My mother made that irritated noise she makes when I name the thing she's hiding. "Don't start." "I'm not starting," I said, the words tight. "I'm clarifying. You just told me my 6-year-old is embarrassing." "She'll get over it," my mother said, like she was talking about a spilled drink. A car blasted past, close enough that the wind yanked at my coat. "We already have flights," I said, "no begging. We're literally on the way." "And now you're not," she snapped. "Allison needs a drama-free day." There it was again. Drama-free, like my child was an unregulated substance. My jaw clenched so hard my teeth hurt. I swallowed the ache rising in my throat. Swallowed the familiar urge to make myself smaller, easier, less inconvenient. "So that's it. It's better this way," my mother said. Final. "We'll see you another time." A pause. Just long enough for me to wait for the part where she said, "I'm sorry." She didn't. She did what she always did when I didn't immediately fold into whatever shape she needed. She ended the call. The silence afterward was worse than the words. I stared at the dark screen for half a second, like maybe it would light back up and say, just kidding. I love my granddaughter. I've lost my mind, it didn't. So, I did the only thing left. I called the person whose comfort apparently ran the holiday calendar. Allison picked up on the second ring. What, she said, already annoyed. Like I'd interrupted something important. Breathing, probably. Did you tell Mom not to let us come? I asked. Because of Ivy? A beat. Then a sigh. One of those sighs designed to make you feel embarrassing for speaking at all. Sarah, Allison said. I have people coming. People? I echoed, my voice sounding strange even to me. Too steady. Too thin. Justin has clients, she added quickly, as if that made it noble. As if hosting Thanksgiving for the commercially important was charity work. My stomach went cold. The shoulder of the freeway suddenly felt too exposed, the wind too sharp, the cars too close. My own body, too full of nowhere to put the feeling. So you didn't want questions? I said. There was silence. Just long enough to count as an answer. Allison's voice sharpened. I don't want a scene. My child exists, I said. That's the scene. You're doing it right now. Allison snapped. This is why nobody can deal with you. You make everything dramatic. I didn't argue. I didn't explain. I didn't try to teach empathy to someone who treated it like an elective. Okay, I said, my voice calm enough that even I didn't recognize it. Got it. I ended the call before she could reply. I stood there for a few more seconds, because I needed to breathe. Because my hands were shaking, and I didn't want Ivy to see that either. Didn't want her to believe she was powerful enough to break her mother. I pressed my palm against my thigh, grounding myself. The cold seeped through my jeans. Then I opened the car door and climbed back in. The car smelled faintly of strawberry hand sanitizer and the sweet, stale crumbs of Ivy's snacks. The hazards blinked on and off. A steady pulse that felt like a distress signal. Ivy's eyes flicked to my face immediately, searching for clues the way kids do when they don't have words yet. Her gaze was too grown-up for 6. Too careful. I forced my face into calm. The kind of calm mothers learn in hostage situations. Hey, I said softly. Ivy didn't hesitate. They don't want me. The words dropped into the car like a stone. My throat tightened so fast it felt like my body had slammed a door from the inside. I had a sudden, vivid urge to scream into the steering wheel, to make a sound big enough to match what I was feeling. But Ivy was watching me. And I had one job. No, I said automatically. Don't lie, Ivy said, her voice wobbling. I heard it. Grandma said I'm embarrassing. The shame on her face was unbearable. Like she was already turning the blame inward, trying to figure out what about her was wrong. Her shoulders curled slightly, as if making herself smaller might fix it. I sat back and stared at the highway. My hazards blinked, steady and bright, like my car was quietly calling for help. I'm sorry, I said, and it came out rough. I hated that those were the words. I hated that sorry was what I had when what I wanted was to reach back through time and shield her from ever hearing it at all. Ivy hugged her stuffed fox tighter, like she could protect it from shame. I stared at the airport signs in the distance, and then it hit me, with a kind of stunned clarity. I could still make this day about us. Not about their rejection. Not about Allison's clients. Not about my mother's cruel efficiency. About us. I put my hands back on the steering wheel, felt the faint vibration of the engine. I signaled, absurdly polite, as if the world hadn't just cracked open, and merged back into traffic. Then, I turned the car around. Ivy didn't say anything for a while. And that was the scariest part. A quiet 6-year-old is never a good sign. The silence in the car had weight. It pressed against my ears. Her usual chatter was gone, replaced by a stillness that felt like grief wearing a child's skin. I kept glancing in the mirror, wanting to catch her eye, wanting to reassure her without turning it into a lecture. But there were no clean words for what had happened. I drove us to an ice cream shop because, honestly, I didn't know what else to do with a broken heart and a child who still, despite everything, deserved magic. The shop was bright inside, fluorescent and warm against the gray afternoon. The air smelled like sugar and waffle cones, like childhood. Like comfort. A bell jingled when we walked in, the sound almost too cheerful. "Pick whatever you want," I said. "2 scoops?" Ivy asked, her voice small, cautious, like she was asking permission to take up space. I crouched down so I could see her face fully. Her eyes were shiny, lashes clumped slightly from the tears she hadn't let fall yet. 2 scoops, I said. She looked at me, testing the edges of this new reality. "Even sprinkles?" she whispered. "Especially sprinkles," I said, and forced my mouth into a smile that felt like stretching a bruise. We sat by the window. Outside, people hurried past, grocery bags, holiday errands, lives that looked so normal it made my chest ache. Ivy stared at her sundae, but she didn't eat it. The ice cream began to soften at the edges, glossy and melting, sprinkles sliding down the sides like tiny, bright confetti that couldn't hold itself together. Her spoon lay untouched. Then I noticed the table next to us. An older couple, their daughter, and a little girl about Ivy's age. They were just, together. Easy. Like nobody had to earn their place. The little girl laughed with her whole body, leaning into her mother without hesitation. The older man reached across the table and wiped a smudge off the child's cheek with a napkin, like it was the most natural thing in the world. The older woman smiled at them with the soft pride of someone who felt safe in love. My throat tightened. I looked away fast, like that would stop it. It didn't. The older woman leaned over, gentle. "Hey," she said. "Are you okay?" I opened my mouth to say, "Fine." Nothing came out. The truth was lodged in my chest, too heavy to move. Ivy sniffed beside me, quiet, like she was trying to be small enough not to cause trouble. That broke something inside me, because no child should ever have to learn that lesson. Not at 6. Not ever. The older woman looked from Ivy to me and softened. "Would you two like to sit with us?" Before I could answer, their little girl slid off her chair and walked over to Ivy. "I'm Mia," she said. "Do you like unicorns?" Ivy blinked, like she couldn't quite believe she'd been addressed so simply, without judgment. "Yeah," she said, the word shy, but real. "Come on," Mia said, and Ivy, her fox still clutched, followed her to the play corner like her body suddenly remembered how to be a kid. The relief that hit me was immediate. And painful. My shoulders dropped a fraction. My lungs finally took a deeper breath. "I'm Barbara," the older woman said. "This is Walter, and that's our daughter, Julia." "Sarah," I said. "And Ivy." Barbara just nodded toward the play corner. "She's got a good kid vibe," she said, like that was all she needed to know. Walter slid a napkin toward me without making it a thing. Small gesture, big impact. The napkin was plain white, but the way he offered it quietly, without pity, made something in my chest loosen. I dabbed at the corner of my eye before I could stop myself, furious at my own weakness and grateful, at the same time, that someone was pretending it wasn't weakness at all. Julia gave me a quick, sympathetic look. Holidays can be a lot. I let out a breath that wasn't quite a laugh. That's one way to put it. Barbara watched me for a second, quiet, not nosy, and asked gently, "Are you okay?" I should have said yes. I should have said just tired and moved on, like I always do. But my mouth betrayed me. "Not really," I admitted. And then, because the dam was already cracked, one sentence slipped out. "We were supposed to fly home for Thanksgiving, and my mom called and told us not to come." Barbara's expression changed. Not dramatic, just immediate. Like the words had landed in her body the way they'd landed in mine. Because of Ivy? Julia asked softly, like she already knew but didn't want to assume. I stared at my hands, my fingers wrapped around my cup, the warmth seeping into my skin. Yeah, I said. Walter's jaw tightened. Barbara's voice dropped. What did she say? I hesitated. I could feel that old instinct. Protect them. Protect my mother's image. Protect the story that kept me tolerable. Then I swallowed. That Ivy was embarrassing. Nobody spoke for a beat. The ice cream shop noise filled the space, spoons clinking, a child squealing, the hiss of an espresso machine. But at our table, everything went quiet and sharp. Barbara didn't ask for a life story. She didn't demand details. She just said quietly, like she couldn't help it, how could anyone say that about a child? And that was the problem. Because the real answer wasn't one sentence. It wasn't just one phone call. It was years of being measured and found lacking. Years of being told, explicitly or not, that love was something you had to earn by being convenient. It was every moment Allison's comfort had been prioritized. Every time I'd been told I was too sensitive, too intense, too much. And I had no idea where to even start. Barbara and Walter were watching me, like they were waiting for the rest of the story. And I realized I'd never actually said it out loud to people who weren't already committed to misunderstanding me. So I did what I always do when I'm about to say something painful. I made a joke. My family's big on tradition, I said. Like turkey and stuffing, and pretending I don't exist unless my sister needs an audience. Julia let out a short laugh that sounded like it surprised her. Barbara didn't laugh, not because she didn't get it, but because she got it too well. You have a sister, she said. Older, I confirmed. Allison. Just saying her name made my shoulders tighten. Allison was the right daughter. The one who didn't cause problems, mostly because everything was just handed to her like a crown. Growing up, Allison's achievements were framed. Mine were acknowledged if nobody was busy. If Allison cried, the house rearranged itself around her. If I cried, my parents said, "Don't start." Even now, remembering it, I could feel that old heat in my chest. Anger mixed with a strange, hollow grief, like mourning a childhood that had technically existed, but never really belonged to me. As adults, Allison married Justin, a man my parents approved of like they were on the judging panel of some reality show called America's Next Acceptable Son-in-Law. He fit into their world like a puzzle piece they'd ordered online. Allison had Mason and Paige, and my parents turned into the kind of grandparents you see in commercials, the kind who baked cookies and posted pictures. When Mason was born, my mother announced it like the royal family had produced an heir. When Ivy was born, my mother said, "Well, that's going to be hard." I didn't say any of that to Barbara and Walter. Not yet. Because the thing is, my parents weren't villains in a movie, twirling mustaches. They could be sweet sometimes, in small, confusing bursts. A birthday card. A toy mailed once. A "Tell Ivy I love her" tacked onto the end of a phone call like a spare thought. Just enough to keep me hoping. Just enough to keep me trying. Hope is stubborn. It clings to scraps like they're feasts. Ivy's father, my ex, was a relationship I thought would become a life. He smiled in photos. He could be charming in public. And then, quietly, behind closed doors, the charm curdled. One night, I packed a bag, buckled a much smaller Ivy into her car seat, and drove to my parents' house. Because I genuinely thought, this is what family is for. I pictured a door opening, my mother pulling me in and saying, "You're safe." What I got was my mother looking at the bag and saying, "Are you sure?" And my father, half awake, blinking at me like I'd shown up with a raccoon. He seemed fine, my mother said. You've always been sensitive, Sarah. Sensitive, another family motto. They let us stay. That's the part one used to focus on, like it excused everything else. But staying felt like living inside a warning label. Nobody screamed at me. Nobody threw us out in the snow. It was subtler than that. It was the way my mother would sigh when Ivy cried, like the sound was personally offensive. It was the way my father would look at the TV when I talked, as if my voice was just another background noise. It was the way my mother would say things like, you know, it's going to be harder doing this alone, and it's a shame things didn't work out. As if the problem was the aesthetic of my life, not the safety of it. Once, I said quietly, carefully, that I was relieved I wasn't married to him. I meant it practically. Divorce is expensive and exhausting. My mother stared at me like I'd confessed to a crime. Families figure it out, she said. People don't just leave. I remember thinking, yes, they do. I just did but I didn't say that. I swallowed it. I told myself my mother was old-fashioned. I told myself she didn't understand abuse. I told myself she wanted what was best. I told myself a lot of things. Then came the part that made everything crystal clear in hindsight. One afternoon, my mother mentioned company coming over, nice people, and said, "Why don't you take Ivy out for a bit?" Not because Ivy needed fresh air. Because my mother didn't want to explain me. I took Ivy to a park and watched her wobble on a slide, her laugh bright and unburdened for those few minutes. The air smelled like damp leaves and cold metal. I remember sitting on a bench, my breath visible, thinking, at least she's happy. I told myself it was temporary. It was always temporary, until it wasn't. I started applying for jobs like my life depended on it, because it kind of did. My parents didn't say, "You have to leave." They said things like, "So what's your plan?" and "You can't stay here forever," and "You don't want to get stuck." Eventually, I got a job offer, a decent one, but it was far. Far enough that visiting meant planning, tickets, the whole production. I remember standing in the kitchen with the offer letter in my hand, Ivy on my hip, saying, "It's really far. I think I should keep looking for something local, just a little longer." I expected my parents to say, "Of course, we can help. Stay. Find the right thing." My mother didn't even hesitate. "A job is a job," she said. "You don't turn that down." "You can't be picky," my father added without looking up. "You don't want to be stuck here forever," my mother finished. And the words landed like a door closing. So, I took the job. I moved. I built a life far away. I told myself it was independence, and it was. But it was also exile with better branding. Despite everything, Ivy kept asking about her grandparents. Mostly because other kids talked about theirs, and she wanted to belong. So when my mother called her embarrassing, it didn't just hurt me. It hit Ivy. And that was the final straw. I could swallow shame aimed at me. But I wasn't going to teach my daughter to swallow it too. That's why, sitting in that ice cream shop, watching Ivy play with Mia, I finally let myself see the truth. It didn't have to be like this. And when Barbara, so casually, so genuinely, said, "Come to our Thanksgiving tomorrow," I understood. It wasn't pity. It was a door. I went. Not because I wasn't terrified, but because Ivy deserved a holiday where she wasn't treated like a problem to manage. Barbara's house smelled like actual Thanksgiving. Roasting turkey, butter, cinnamon, something baking that made the whole place feel warm before anyone even spoke to you. The scent hit me immediately when the door opened. Rich and layered, like comfort made tangible. Walter opened the door with a grin, like we were expected, not accommodated. "Sarah," he said, like my name belonged in his house. "You made it." Ivy hovered behind me at first, clutching her stuffed fox like a shield. Her eyes darted around, taking in the unfamiliar space. Then Mia appeared, a burst of energy, and said, "You're here," like it was the best news of her life. Ivy's shoulders dropped an inch. Then another. Barbara handed me a glass of something warm and said, "Kitchen's that way. Shoes wherever." Then, just a beat, she added, "Your family, today." That phrase could have been corny. Coming from Barbara, it felt like truth. Ivy and Mia disappeared into a room full of toys, and I stood there, still in my coat, blinking like someone who'd walked into the wrong movie. Then my phone buzzed. I checked it quickly, out of habit. Like maybe the universe would send me an apology text and I could go back to believing in magic. It was Facebook. And there it was. A photo of my parents at the table with Allison and Justin, Mason and Paige, all smiling. Posed. Perfect. My mother's chin lifted, her expression practiced. My father looked present but distant. Allison's smile was wide and flawless. Justin leaned in like he owned the moment. The kids looked polished. The kind of picture that screams, "We are grateful. We are blessed. We are also very good at angles." The caption was something about family and quality time with the grandkids. No mention of me. No mention of Ivy. Not even a polite lie. Just clean eraser. I stared at it for a long second, and something in me went very still. Not sad. Not shocked. Just, done. I slid my phone back into my pocket and walked into Barbara's kitchen, where Julia was stirring something on the stove, and Walter was carving a turkey like he took it personally. Steam fogged the windows. The countertops were crowded with bowls and platters. The sound of laughter drifted in from the living room. There was music playing softly. Barbara glanced at my face and didn't ask. She just nudged a plate toward me and said, "Sit. Eat while it's hot." And here's the thing. I didn't cry. Not because I wasn't hurt. But because I finally understood that my tears were wasted on people who used them as proof I was dramatic. So I took action. It wasn't dramatic action. It wasn't revenge. It was a quiet, internal decision, so firm it felt like steel. Ivy would never audition for love again. Later, while we were eating, Ivy leaned toward me and asked, very softly, "Mom, do you think Grandma will ever want me?" My fork paused in midair. The room kept moving around us. Plates passed. Someone laughing at a story. Walter asking who wanted more gravy. But for me, everything narrowed to Ivy's voice and the small tremble underneath it. Her eyes were fixed on her mashed potatoes, as if she couldn't bear to look up and see the answer on my face. Across the table, Barbara didn't look at me. She didn't need to. I could feel her listening, steady and present, like a hand bracing a door. I forced my voice into calm. "You are not the problem," I said. "Not ever." Ivy nodded, like she wanted to believe me, but wasn't sure she was allowed to. Julia reached over and slid Ivy an extra roll. "No fuss. No poor baby. Just here. You're included." After Thanksgiving, my parents didn't text. I didn't text. Days turned into weeks. Weeks into months. It wasn't a dramatic cutoff. It was a mutual silence that proved how conditional my place in that family had always been. If I wasn't showing up to be managed, nobody came looking. Meanwhile, Sunday dinners at Barbara and Walter's became normal. Every week, 5 o'clock. Like a standing appointment with safety. Slowly, Ivy's drawings started appearing on their fridge. A kid cup stayed in the cabinet like it lived there. Mia would save Ivy a seat without being told. Walter would ask Ivy about school like her answer mattered, leaning in as if every detail of first grade was worthy of serious attention. One Sunday, Ivy spilled apple juice. I flinched, because my body still expected sighs and eye rolls. "And honestly, Sarah." Barbara just grabbed a towel and said, "It's a table. It's been through worse." Walter nodded solemnly. "I once spilled gravy on a Thanksgiving centerpiece in 1998. The family survived." Ivy giggled. A real giggle. Dry humor is how I survived my childhood. Warm humor is how Ivy was healing. And then, one afternoon, it happened. Ivy was running toward Barbara in the kitchen, arms open, and she shouted, "Grandma Barbara." I stopped breathing. I expected correction. Discomfort. I expected someone to say, "Oh no, sweetheart, I'm not your..." Barbara turned, opened her arms, and said, "There's my girl." Just like that. Walter looked up from the newspaper and said, "Hey, kiddo." And Ivy beamed. I went to the bathroom and stared at myself in the mirror for a full minute, because my eyes were wet, and I was furious at how unfair it was that love could be that easy if people simply chose it. That week, I updated the documents that mattered. School pickup. Emergency contacts. Medical permissions. And a guardianship plan. Quiet. Legal. Permanent. If anything happened to me, Ivy would go to Barbara and Walter. Not my parents. Not Allison. Not Justin. It was the most adult sentence I'd ever written, and my hand didn't shake once. Julia and I got closer too. Not in a sit and discuss our feelings for 3 hours way. In a real-life way. We swapped childcare once. Then again. We vented while the kids played, voices low, eyes occasionally flicking toward the playroom with that constant parental vigilance. It started to feel like sisterhood without either of us naming it. Like closeness could exist without being a performance. Then Julia invited me to a single-parent play meetup she ran once a week at a community center. It's low stakes, she promised. Kids play. Adults pretend they remember how to socialize. That sounded like my kind of nightmare. So I went. And that's where I met Lucas. He walked in with a little boy, Leo, who had a cowlick and the serious expression of a child evaluating whether this place had snacks. Lucas wasn't flashy. He didn't walk in like he was auditioning to be everyone's favorite dad. He just noticed things. He held the door for a mom juggling a stroller. He picked up a dropped sippy cup like it wasn't beneath him. He nodded at Ivy like she was a person, not an accessory to me. It didn't happen all at once. Lucas became a steady part of our routine, then our life. Ivy and Leo clicked the way kids do when they find someone who doesn't treat them like they're too much. They built towers and knocked them down and argued over toys with the kind of fierce honesty only children have, then forgave each other in minutes. Sundays at Barbara and Walter's became normal. A year passed, quiet, solid, and somehow, without fanfare, we ended up planning a wedding. 1 year after the Thanksgiving that started it all, my life looked nothing like it used to. I was engaged to Lucas. Ivy had Leo and Mia like built-in best friends. Barbara and Walter weren't just nice people we met once. They were family. My biological family had been silent for a year. So when Mom's name lit up my phone, I stared at it like it might bite. Lucas looked up from where he was helping Ivy with a puzzle, his hand steady over the pieces. "You okay?" "Yeah," I said, and answered. "Sarah," my mother said, careful, controlled. The same tone from the highway. "I hear you're getting married." "Yeah." A beat. Then the real reason. "Where is our invitation?" I kept my voice calm. "You're not invited." Silence. Then outrage, like I'd broken a law. "What do you mean you're not inviting us?" "I mean exactly that." "This is ridiculous," she snapped. "What was ridiculous," I said, "was you calling my 6-year-old embarrassing." "Don't start," she warned. I almost laughed. Muscle memory. "I'm not starting," I said. "I'm finishing." She hung up. Then the pressure came in waves. Calls. Texts. Relatives I hadn't heard from in years suddenly discovering my number. "You can't not invite your parents. Be the bigger person. Family is family." I explained once, one sentence to one person, they rejected Ivy. She heard it. The line went quiet after that. Then the voicemail arrived. "We're coming anyway," my mother said, tight and satisfied, like she'd solved a problem. Allison texted, "You're being dramatic. This is why nobody can deal with you." Lucas listened to it all, jaw tight. "You're not crazy," he said quietly. "Thank you," I said. "I'd like that embroidered on a pillow." We arranged security for the wedding. One rule, no exceptions, no one approaches Ivy. Wedding day arrived. I was getting ready with Julia fussing over a curling iron, Barbara fixing Ivy's dress, and Walter standing nearby, pretending he wasn't emotional. The room smelled like hairspray and perfume and warm fabric. Ivy's dress was pale and bright, the kind of thing that made her feel like a storybook character. Barbara's hands were gentle as she smoothed the fabric, adjusted a ribbon, tucked a stray curl behind Ivy's ear. Ivy spun. "Do I look fancy?" "You look like trouble," Julia said fondly. "The best kind." Barbara smiled at Ivy. "Our girl." Walter cleared his throat. "Ready, kiddo." Then the coordinator stepped in. "Sarah," she said, her voice careful. "Your parents are here. And your sister's family." My pulse spiked. Lucas was instantly beside me. His presence a solid wall. "Want them removed?" he asked. I looked at Ivy. Bright dress, little bracelet, 6-year-old heart still healing. I wasn't risking a shouting match with Ivy within earshot. "No," I said. "Let them in, back row, away from Ivy. If they move toward her, stop them." The coordinator nodded and disappeared. Walter offered his arm. His hand was steady. That was the whole point. I stepped into the aisle. They were in the back. My mother, stiff. My father, shrinking. Allison scanning the room like it was a performance review. Justin leaning back like he belonged. Mason and Paige, bored already. My biological father didn't stand. Walter did. Walter walked me down the aisle like he was honored to be there, like I mattered. Lucas waited at the altar, eyes locked on me. The kind of gaze that says, *I choose you. I choose your child*, and we got married. My biological family watched from the back, like people who'd shown up too late to matter. At the reception, Ivy was safe at the kids' table with Mia and Leo. That was all I cared about. Then the DJ tapped the mic. If I can have everyone's attention, my stomach tightened. Not fear. Anticipation. Because I'd planned this part. I took the microphone. "Thank you," I said, "for being here." I paused. Then I said it. Calm. Clear. Impossible to ignore. A year ago, I was told not to come to Thanksgiving because my child was too much. A hush moved through the room. Chairs shifting. Breaths caught. The air changed. That call didn't take something from us, I continued. It showed me where we actually belonged. I turned toward Barbara and Walter. "Barbara, Walter, you made room for us when you didn't have to. You loved Ivy like she wasn't a burden. Like she was exactly what she is, an incredible kid." The room erupted. Applause. Whistles. People standing. Barbara stood, overwhelmed. Walter stood beside her, face red and proud. "Julia," I added, and my voice softened in a way I couldn't hide, "you became the sister I always needed." More applause. Then I looked at the back row. My mother's face had gone blank. Allison looked stunned. Justin's smile was gone. My father stared at his hands. Their faces were pale. Because now the room knew. Now the story belonged to me. I handed the mic back and stepped into Lucas's arms. For one perfect second, it was mine. Then my mother shoved her way through the crowd. "What did you just say?" she hissed. "The truth," I said. "You humiliated us," she snapped. "You humiliated a 6-year-old, I said. "I'm just matching energy." Her eyes flashed. "That's my granddaughter." "You rejected her," I kept my voice low. "We did not," she started. "Stop," I said, and the word landed like a door closing. "You said she was embarrassing. She tried the last weapon she had. You can't keep her from us. We have rights." And that's when I dropped it. "If anything happens to me," I said evenly, "Ivy goes to Barbara and Walter. Not you." My mother actually staggered. "You what?" "You're not listed anywhere that matters," I said softly. My father's eyes filled. Allison looked furious. My mother spun toward Ivy, like she could still reclaim something. "There you are," she called, her voice suddenly sweet. "Come here, sweetheart." Security appeared instantly and blocked her. Walter stepped in too, quiet, immovable. Julia was already moving Ivy away. Barbara reached her first, calm and practiced, like this wasn't the first time she'd protected a child from grown-up chaos. My mother's voice rose. "This is my family." Walter's voice stayed low. "Not today." I looked at my mother and felt something settle. Calm. Final. "I don't hate you," I said quietly. "I've just stopped waiting for you to be different." Then I nodded to security. "Please escort them out." They were removed. My mother kept looking back, like she expected me to chase her. I didn't. I crouched in front of Ivy. "You okay?" Ivy frowned, her eyes searching, trying to place the shape of what she'd just witnessed. "Was that Grandma?" "That was someone who doesn't get to hurt you anymore," I said. Ivy blinked. Then she asked, "Can I have cake now?" A laugh broke out of me. Shaky. Real. Relieved. Absolutely. And I went back to my wedding. The next morning, my phone was full of messages from people who cared more about tradition than a child's feelings. I deleted them. Each swipe felt like clearing debris after a storm, tidying up the mess other people insisted I should live inside. My chest still felt tender, but it was a clean tenderness now. Not the infected kind I'd carried for years. Then one message came in from Aunt Denise. "I heard what happened. I'm proud of you. Protect Ivy. You're doing the right thing." I stared at it for a long time. The words didn't demand anything from me. They didn't ask me to soften the truth. They didn't tell me to be smaller. They were simply there. Steady. Validating. Real. Then I typed back, "Thank you." And for the first time in my life, I meant it when I thought, "I'm free." Call to action. This whole journey taught me so much about what family truly means, and how sometimes, you have to create your own. Have you ever had to draw a hard line with family, especially to protect someone you love? Or maybe you found your chosen family in the most unexpected places? Tell me your stories in the comments below, I really want to hear them.